Well, hi, knickknackers. Welcome to Canning with Nicole. So I have been asked over the years numerous times to teach people how to can. Some people are really interested, really scared. And I suppose in the olden days when canning first came out, there was a reason to be scared, but really nowadays there is no reason to. So I just wanted to start off my first video on YouTube with some basics so that you guys, when I'm doing my canning, hopefully this video will answer any questions that you might have during the process. But if not, then I'll address them with each video. So the first thing that I'll talk about is the equipment that you'll be using. So different produce or items is going to require different equipment. The easiest one to start off with is a water bath, and that's because you can pretty much use any pot for water bath canning as long as the water goes above the jars by at least 1 inch. And as you can see with my jars here, we have different jar sizes. So if you're doing something like I have some cowboy candy in a little half pint here, this would easily fit in pretty much any size pot that we use for regular boiling noodles. And if you don't have the canning pot, you can use a towel to place on the bottom of the pot to set your jars on, because you never want to set jars straight on the very bottom of a hot pot. The other thing you can do is arrange some extra lids, and every jar or any box of jars that you buy is going to come with the lids and the rings. You can take the rings and place them around the bottom and then set them on the top in your canning pot, just like that, and that will keep them off the direct source of heat. Most canning pots come with little inserts that you stick in the bottom. You can also, on Amazon, they sell the little racks just individually, so you could even just go and buy a rack. The other instrument or equipment that you would need, if you're going to get into the low acid foods, any vegetables, unless you're pickling, or any meat, you're going to want pressure canners. And there are a couple of different kinds of pressure canners. This is the Presto, and this is the All-American. The All-American I like because this one has the, this one just has the aluminum on aluminum. There is no gaskets or anything that you have to worry about like you do with the Prestos. With these, you have to make sure that they're pliable, there's no cracking, and you have to make sure that you have enough time between the uses that if you need to replace it, you have extra. Both of these, I don't have the weights on these, but both of these do have weights. But you can see that they also have the gauges. I don't rely on the gauges myself. I rely on the weights because to me that's more reliable. Gauges can actually become inaccurate, and you need to send those in for testing, which I don't do because I use the weights. Other equipment that you might, I say might, there are people that try to can without like the jar lifters. If you're doing the boiling water bath and trying to get those out, that's just a risk. So you have the jar lifters, the funnels. You can make do without the funnels, but life is so much easier with the funnels. They don't require you to heat up your lids anymore. That's a new development with the new ball lids. But they used to, and so you would they started out boiling them, then they went to just soaking them in hot water. So these are really nice to have when you're soaking them. I continue to soak. I've heard of people having lots of failures when they don't soak, and that soaking them just kind of makes them more pliable right before you put them on the jar lid and get them in your canner. So I still tend to soak mine. The other thing you'll need is a debubbler, and you can use any utensil that is not metal. So if you have the plastic knives on hand, something like that, or I know people use like the wooden skewers to debubble. A lot of times when you buy kits, they'll come with all of these things in them. So there's that. The other thing I want to talk about is canning books. So there are a ton of canning books out there. And to me, the essential canning book that anybody who wants to start canning, if you're going to buy a book, is this book. It has all of the basics to get you started, and you know that everything in here is going to be safe. It is the oldest book of my books, but to me it's the first one that anybody who wants to start canning should buy. Some other kind of fun canning books. These all come from Ball, and Ball is a trusted resource for canning recipes. You never want to go with canning books like there's a Amish canning book. Don't start out with that book. Until you know what you're doing, until you know what is safe to can, what not to can, start off with books that are going to give you 100% safe information for canning. So that being said, there are things that you should not can. And the Amish book, I mentioned that one just because I know a lot of the YouTubers that I watch love that book. But they do have some unsafe ingredients to some of their canning products. And things that you should never, ever, ever can. Dairy, milk, butter, cheese, never any eggs, squash. Let's see, cabbage is one, and any bread product, rice, pasta, never can those. It just is, years ago they used to, and you will hear people say, well, my grandma did, but years ago we had a lot of botulism outbreaks too, and testing has been done for hundreds of years, 100 years, and have found products that are what is safe and what is not safe. So know what is safe before you can it. Do your research. Ball has a website. There are extension websites for universities and that kind of thing. Those have all been tested at the university, so you can check those out. And if it's listed there, that's a safe recipe. That's a safe site that you can go to. Let's see. The other thing I want to talk about is your altitude. So before you start canning, and this is something that I myself did not really even check out before I started canning. I should have, but I didn't. But altitude can be very important. I knew with the pressure canning that for my altitude, I needed to use a 15-pound pressure. But I didn't ever take into consideration for my water bath canning. So I wanted to show you guys this chart here. And that will, you know, here in Sela, we're over 1,000 feet. So 1,000 to 300 feet. When I follow a recipe in this book or any of these other books, I know that I need to add 5 minutes to my pressure canning time. And that's just pretty standard now with any of my canning projects, that I'm just going to automatically add 5 minutes to any of my things that I'm doing. So, oh, one thing that I didn't mention with the equipment is obviously you're going to need jars. Jars, rings, and lids. And you can find jars at all sorts of sizes. These ones with the really big mouths, wide mouth and regular mouth. And I find different uses for different size jars. If I'm doing soups or things with small particles in them, like my onions and my tomatoes I've cut up real small in there, I don't mind using the wide mouth for that kind of, or the regular mouth for that kind of thing. But if I'm doing something, pinto beans, anything that has a lot of substance to it, I use my wide mouth jars. I just find that the things come out easier. With my pickled asparagus in here, I find that it's easier to pack. If I run out of jars and I'm strapped and I want to finish canning, then obviously I'll use my regular if I need to, but I prefer my wide mouth for that kind of thing. And for my the pint-sized jars. They come in the same, wide mouth and regular, and I just kind of, you know, whatever I have on hand is what I use for these, unless there's a specific reason. And same with the half pints. They come in the wide mouth and the regular, and I kind of go through stages where sometimes I prefer these and sometimes I prefer these. So it doesn't, you know, it doesn't really matter. They're the same size, processing times, all that is going to be the same. So anyway, I think that's it for the first video. I hope that you guys learned something, and if you have any other questions, feel free to leave me a comment. And they always say it, like, subscribe, and share. So like, subscribe, and share. Thank you. This is Canning with. So we finished the video, and Becca and I were talking about how we were going to cut and paste and all that good stuff. And I had forgotten that I did not even talk about the altitude for the pressure canner. So you can see in here how many feet you are, and then if you're going to use the weighted gauge, which is one of these. This is the weight, and you can see there's a 5, 10, and 15. So if you are 0 to 1,000 feet, you can use a 10-pound weight, and anything above that is 15, and we're at over 1,100, so I always use a 15. If you don't have the weight, and you're just going by your gauge, the dial gauge, then you can use your 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 pounds of pressure using your gauge. And that is the little thing I showed you on the pressure canner that needs to be sent in and tested yearly to make sure that it's accurate, because if you're using that, then you want to make sure that it is getting up to the pressure you need. So anyway, I just thought I would share that with you guys. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.